This year's been really great, actually. We've been to trial 4 times and three not guilties, and then one civil trial that we won, I think, $275,000, and the original offer was like 20 grand. So
Wow.
we've done well this year, and we continue to work very hard for our clients. So it's been a good career and good year so far.
Okay. So I'm, and this is a personal question too. I've known you in the capacity of a criminal defense attorney. How closely do you work on civil cases, or do you do civil cases as well? Like I usually kind of like keep them in like two different buckets, but it
Sure.
appears that they might be very well overlapped.
Yeah, so our firm does criminal and does civil. When it's a trial, I'll do the civil trial. I don't do a lot of the background work on the civil cases. I don't do a lot of the discovery. At the very beginning of civil cases, I'll handle the discussions with the other side and some of the initial hearings, the motions to dismiss and things of that nature. But the discovery stuff and the motion practice on civil stuff, I really don't get too involved in. That's usually my law partner. But when it comes down to the trial, I will usually try the civil case. And just for some background, when I first left the state attorney's office, I was working in a civil firm down here in Florida that did a lot of contract work, a lot of litigation, a lot of trials. So my first year out, I probably did, I don't know, 20 trials, maybe 18 trials with that firm. And then when I went out on my own, that's when people started to know me more for the criminal stuff because I started winning a lot of cases. So the first or second year I had my own practice. I think I won 9 or 10 cases in a row. So I got like an award, like a triple hat trick award. And then kind of things took off from there, and word got out, and my client list grew, and I was lucky enough to make relations with a lot of very popular individuals that if they got in trouble anywhere in the country, they would generally call me, and I would handle their cases for them. Some, in the press, and some not in the press. It just depends on the case and depends on what they're accused of. But generally, when someone gets in trouble, I get a phone call at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I try to do my best to fix whatever the situation is.
That's so interesting. And by the way, so I definitely want to like. I feel like I've heard your name so much, and now I almost go to your page for so much analysis because we're making so many assumptions on so many different cases, and a lot of times we obviously lack the law degree, but we lack the experience to center. But before that, would you consider yourself, because there's three guys in Atlanta or Georgia actually. I don't know if it's necessarily just Atlanta. And there's a few people who I've heard consistently helping out, whether it's rappers or just
Sure.
people of high, high importance, wealthy individuals.
Popularity, sure.
Exactly. I've considered. I have a list of super attorneys, and these are attorneys that listen. You're really trying to get out your case. You need them. You're on that list. So for Georgia, and you're the only one I have for Florida, right? So you're the only one I have for Florida. I'm trying to get more familiar with other people who operate in Florida. In Georgia, I have Brian Steele,
Drew.
Drew Finland, and Sado. And I think I'm saying his name right. Sado. I think Sado. Those are the three there, and I'm like, hey, if you call yourself balling, you got all these cars, and you get in some trouble, you better get one of these guys if you're trying to make sure you're gonna.
Sure.
Yeah, you're the guy for Florida. How did you develop that reputation? How did you even meet some of these guys? I feel like even the recent case with uh what's my guy named Rod Wave, and I read
Sure.
it and I was just like, he's done. Like I was over here. I was like, yo, oh, the RICO case is coming. This is bad. This is over. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how could he get himself in this position? And then just systematically in 2 weeks, I watch your page and I'm like, this is a bullshit case. How?
Yeah. And by the way, I connect with a lot of attorneys around the country that I consider, very, very good attorneys. I've referred cases to Drew in Atlanta, and I've referred cases to Chesnoff in Los Angeles. There's a lot of individuals that I would refer cases to if I don't have the time to either do them, or if I feel like the client would be better served by someone who has better connections than I do in an area maybe that need those connections. So if a case is like, if a case can be resolved without going to trial, and it's in an area where I know someone that can handle a case, I'll refer that case out. Because like I said, for me, it's about the client getting the best service that the client can get. It's not about me getting a case for XYZ in, Iowa, or, oh, hey, someone got in trouble in Mexico. They want me to fly down to Mexico. If there's a local lawyer there that I know that can do a better job for that individual, I'll refer them to that individual. I might go down to coordinate it. I might, supervise it, but ultimately I'd want the best person for that job. So how I got involved is, like I said, I just worked hard. I built up my reputation over a period of time. I've been doing this for 27 years. And I was able to make really good connections. In 2005, I was on a show called The Apprentice with Donald Trump.
Really?
So yeah, so in 2005, I was obviously still practicing, and I still had a variety of NFL players and baseball players that I was representing. And then after I was on that show, I stayed in contact, obviously, with individuals I met on the show, and including the president. And then I would, you know, from that show, I got invited to a lot of different parties and things of that nature. I made friends. I was going to the Playboy Mansion. I think I went to the Playboy Mansion 3 or 4 times, and I met a lot of people
Did you
there.
go to a Diddy party?
And no Diddy parties. No, I never been invited to a Diddy party. And but I was able to make a lot of good connections, and I'm always, if I can do a favor for somebody, I always go out of my way to do a favor for somebody, not expecting anything in return. But that's really has been my motivating kind of the way my career has developed. Instead of doing marketing or advertising or cheesy TV things, if someone got in trouble and I could help them without it being a big deal, I would do that. And then one thing led to the next, and someone would say like, "Oh, I remember Brad helped me out of a situation," and they might refer me to someone else, and that's generally what happens. And like I said, also for attorneys, if an attorney's just coming out of law school, I remember when I first opened my office, if an attorney was coming out of law school or coming out of the state attorney's office or the PD's office, I would give them free office space for the first year just
Really?
to get their feet wet and kind of get their, make their bones. And those people went on to do amazing things. They're judges, and some of them are state attorneys, the head state attorneys in other districts. And so I always maintain those relationships. And I think it's very important in any career. I mean, that. So like in any career, if you don't maintain your relationships, you're not an up and up guy. I don't think you go very far. But I think if you're, a handshake guy, and I think that you're honest with people and you maintain relationships, not just when you need them. You don't call people just when you need them. You call them to check on them and make sure everything's good, and follow up. I think that behooves everybody's career in any field, your field, my field, being a doctor, any kind of thing that you can, nurture relationships. That's how, you make your career go forward, in
Hey,
my opinion.
two things. And again, I'm asking as the the regular hip hop fan, but we've heard a lot about, like, because when we hear about, when I even look at you as like a super attorney, and I look at some of these guys, and I'm like, how the hell are they able to make certain things happen? There's this one, and I know my chat's gonna tell me like who it is. Someone was making a story about like pretty much the legal process. He said he knew he had the right attorney when his attorney said, "Hey, oh, actually no, I think I was interviewing big folks from Chicago who he was charged with like a murder, but it was self defense. Anyway, he was like, he knew he had the right attorney when his attorney said, "Hey, me and the judge, we're gonna be golfing this weekend. Go home, don't worry about it too much." And I said, that would be pretty good. Okay, I want you to react to that, but also a client, it doesn't matter if it's Kodak, it doesn't matter who, when they walk in and you see the police report, the police said A, B, C, D, E, F, G, do you say to them, or do you want them to say, yo, I did that shit, but please get me off? Or do you even ask that question if you did it?
So the first part of that question about relationships with judges or prosecutors or anything like that. I mean, it's always important. Most of my relationship with judges and prosecutors, it's not that, they will, oh, okay, they're gonna, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's nothing like that. It's just when you're in a courtroom that is a fair and unbiased courtroom and you're a good attorney, they let you do your work. And that's the key. I had a federal case, Rod Wave's brother, actually, or Rod Wave's what he considers his brother. I had this federal case in Tampa with him about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and that judge was a very difficult judge. She really wasn't, and she was a Trump appointee, by the way,
Yeah.
but she really wasn't allowing the kind of work that could be done in a case to be done. We ended up getting a not guilty anyways on the federal charge, but it was a difficult, it was a difficult time. It was a difficult, I think it was about a week and a half or a week. And it was a difficult case. And it was, like I said, a tough judge makes your job more difficult. A judge that kind of understands everything that's going on in the courtroom, how a court case evolves. It's very fluid. You're in a trial. There's objections to be made. There's evidence that may come in or may not come in, and that could change the trajectory of the case in your favor or against you. So all those things kind of happen. And I think that the relationships that you have, like I said, they don't go out of your way and do you a favor, but at the same token, just having that, knowing that there's a kind of a mutual respect in the courtroom, that I think that benefits the client and benefits the jury as well, because they get to see real lawyering going on. So that was the first part of the question. Well, now I forgot what the second part of the question was. What was your second part of that question?
The second part is, and I've seen this from I think Ti interviewed Sado, and he was saying, do you ever take on clients where the client tell you like, hey, I'm gonna be real with you, I did that
Oh
shit.
yeah. So right. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on your defense. There's a lot of times you have to know everything that went on, right? In order to come up with a defense. There's sometimes it might be, a case where they're being charged with murder, but it might be a self-defense. It might be a stand your ground case. There might be legal defenses to things. There's all sorts of things that go on that sometimes you need to know everything and sometimes you don't. And if I don't need to know it in order to provide a defense, I'm not going to start asking my client questions that I don't have to know in order to provide them a defense. So it's kind of a yes and no question, depending on the defense that's going to be raised, depending on the facts of the case, depending on the evidence, if there's video evidence and telephone evidence, things of that nature. That's really where it goes. But for most part, you know, especially today, in today's day and age, there's video evidence, telephone evidence. There is not a harder time to get not guilties than right now, because people, they travel around with their phones, and their phones will show where they were or where they weren't at a certain time. Phone records, texts, people are posting more than ever on videos, which, it always shocks me, but it seems to be more of the younger guys now that just they post themselves committing crimes, which no, if you told someone 20 years ago, and I represented real guys 20 years, I mean real guys like from Philly and Chicago, that these are the type of guys that you do not want to meet in the wrong situation. If you told them 20 years ago that, kids would be posting themselves committing burglaries and stealing cars and doing all kinds of crazy shit, no one would believe that would be true. But, it happens all the time.
Hey, speaking of which, as you mentioned that about like phones and all that type of evidence, so just looking at it from like a technological perspective, which again, I imagine a case with, hey, GPS says you were here. GPS puts you on the scene, this and third. It reminds me eerily of, and that's what I was Googling on this screen over here, the YNW Melly case.
Sure.
And were you ever approached to like be a part of that case? And
Sure. So I originally represented Melly at the very beginning of the case, myself and another individual. His name's Jason Williams. And we were both on the case. And what happened was Jason ended up becoming the prosecutor, the state attorney in New Orleans. So he took that job. And I think Melly wanted to go in a different direction, ended up hiring some other attorneys. There was no ill will or anything like that. I had a theory for the case. I don't know if he liked my theory as opposed to a different theory. I saw the trial, the original first trial. I think some things that were done in that first trial probably could have been avoided, and it could have been a better result. But it was a hung jury, and that's a win on a murder case in anybody's view. Uh, I I just think that it probably could have been done a little bit different. His new attorney, I was asked to be brought back on the second trial. The problem was is now I have to be able to dedicate, especially in a murder case, I have to be able to dedicate 100% of my office to that case, especially one the size of that. And I represent an individual in San Francisco on a murder case. I don't know if you know it. There was an individual who invented Cash App, and he was a
I
victim of a crime out there. And I represent the individual who's accused of that in San Francisco. So it was like I only take a certain number of cases. I'm not going to take more cases than I can handle because that's just a recipe for disaster, and that's why I have a reputation of doing a good job. So I just didn't have the bandwidth to take it. But his attorneys right now, I think, are doing a spectacular job. They're filing the right motions, the same motions that should have been filed on the first case. I think they filed on this one, and they're excellent attorneys. I mean, I know them very well, and I think they're going to do a good job for Melly. But like I said, my schedule fills up, my dance card fills up very quickly. And some things are reported and some things aren't. Like we just represented Kai Cenat in that dismissal in New York. Some
Wait,
things,
wait, wait. Are you? And I'm sorry for cutting you off. So I think when people think attorneys, they also think you operate in a jurisdiction,
yeah,
or a certain jurisdiction, and
sure,
you're a Florida attorney, so you wouldn't deal with matters outside Florida. You've mentioned San Francisco. Now you're
yeah.
mentioning New York. Is the law book in each state seems to be different. How do you get acclimated? Do you have someone there work with you, or you just
So it depends on the state. I'm licensed in New York. My family's from New York, so I grew up in that area. I grew up in Massachusetts, but my whole family's from New York. So I clerked in New York for a New York Supreme Court judge who's now a defense attorney. Ironically, he went back to being a defense attorney. He's really excellent. He works with an individual, you probably know him, Arthur Ayala, who is a big time New York City attorney and a great attorney. And the judge I clerked for is a phenomenal attorney. And that's kind of where I learned a lot when I was clerking for him. But I'm licensed in New York. I'm licensed in Washington, D.C. We've handled cases in Washington, D.C., and New York, and federal bar in Puerto Rico. But there is a economic barrier to me representing individuals in different states, depending on what the charge is. Like, you're not going to hire me for a DUI in New York
okay?
City. So, and I get a lot of people that are like, "Hey, I got a possession case in New York. It
Well, well,
doesn't pay to hire me."
well, why did Kai bring you on, or in your opinion, as much as you can speak? I know there's attorney-client privilege.
Yeah. I think again, it just relationships, and he knew that that I get things done, and the relationships I have with individuals that knew him, and great kid. It really unbelievable case that he even got that they were even considering to file charges on him, in my opinion,
Could you
after I looked at
explain?
all the evidence.
Could you explain? Because some people might not
Sure.
necessarily know.
So they were proposing to charge him. They arrested him and they did charge him, but not formally, with inciting a riot and all these other kind of you know felony offenses surrounding a giveaway for like PlayStations.
Yeah.
And he put it on his post that he was going to have a giveaway for these PlayStations. And it was a perfect storm, right? It was like during the summer, no one had anything to do, kids were not in school, and what you would anticipate, maybe 100 kids showing up, 3,000 kids show up. And there were some elements that were among the 3,000 that weren't there to get free PlayStations, and they just started destroying stuff. And then they blamed Kai for that. And that was a tough case because I just didn't think that they had enough evidence to go forward with it. Ultimately, the prosecutor who was handling the case was a real gentleman. I talked to him several times about it. We went back and forth, and we ended up resolving the case with a dismissal. It wasn't even a dismissal; it was just a decline, meaning they were declining filing the charges. And I think that worked out. The whole
Wait,
case
so they
worked
never
out.
filed formally?
No, they never filed
Oh
formally. He
wow.
never had to go back to. He never had to go to court at all. And like I said, I think he's a good kid. And when I watch, and I when I first took the case, I wasn't really super familiar with who Kai was, and the type of things that he does, and the type of charity work that he does, and things of that nature. And over the course of the case, I became very familiar with him. And he's a funny kid, and like I said, I think he's a good kid. So I'm glad that worked out well for him. But
Okay.
again, not a press case, no big deal. And I don't like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you take this for the press or that for the press. I really don't take case. People call me when they don't want press, and there's plenty of cases that I've handled where there's absolutely no press around it because I get it dismissed before it even gets filed, or I take care of a situation where there's some sort of civil lawsuit. And that probably is a good segue into why Diddy should have resolved that case with Cassie prior to them filing that lawsuit.
You've said that many times.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate, and I'm also
sure.
introduce what the culture and the people are saying. So if you're the attorney in that situation, well, people are gonna say, well, obviously it could have been resolved before it ever hit the press, but isn't resolving a almost like it's like a smoke signal, like, yo, yeah, I'm guilty, I just don't want this to go any further, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe
I get it. I get it.
maybe
So you kind of you hit the nail on the head in terms of a lot of, once cases are filed, I think when you resolve them after they're filed, sometimes that's true. The problem here was, so a lot of times people will, good attorneys, and when I say good attorneys, attorneys that are familiar with how this works, the Gloria Allreds of the world, and Gloria Allred is a pretty well-known civil attorney in California, and she files a lot of these sexual harassment cases, things of that nature. Someone like her usually types up a letter first, sends a letter over and says, a threatening letter. Hey, I represent XYZ, and you already know what went down, and this is what we're demanding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She actually did the Tiger Woods, one of the mistresses of Tiger Woods. And the whole deal with behind that was, okay, we're going to get this resolved. It's going to be quiet. It's going to be an NDA, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, that's not what happened, because he got hit with a bunch of other stuff. But that's generally what the first kind of wave is. And then after that, they're like, hey, listen, we're really serious. Here's a complaint we're going to be filing tomorrow. And then the complaint lays out, in Cassie's case, if that's the complaint, which I guarantee it is, that they sent over to Diddy or his team or whatever.
you think they sent the
Um,
whole complaint over.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you're looking to get 35 or 40 million dollars in a settlement, you are typing up a complaint and you're sending it over to the other side and saying, "Hey, we'd like to resolve this, but here's what we will be filing, next week if we don't hear back from you." And I don't know why, but maybe people didn't take it serious. I have no idea. But if I was the attorney who read that, and my belief is he has an excellent attorney, and I mean excellent, if it's the attorney that I'm thinking of. But I don't know if it was, something
I
from,
thought was it Ben Brafman who dealt with that?
yes.
Yeah,
And just to be completely transparent, I love Ben Brafman.
yeah.
I think he's one of the finest attorneys in New York City. I think he's super, super smart. I've referred cases to him before. We've talked about cases together. He's given me great advice as a young attorney. I just think he's a spectacular attorney, and I like to think that the way that I conduct myself in court is because of all of these older attorneys that took time out when I was younger. I almost said little. When I was younger, that really helped me with cases and gave me good advice. And there's a slew of them. And I was friendly with F. Lee Bailey, back in the day, and got great advice on cross examinations. And I was just very lucky, like I said, to garner some really good relationships. But
Let me
back to
ask
the
you this
point.
question though. So,
Sure.
like, if I'm the client, I'm Diddy, right? Granted,
Yeah.
it's rumored that I'm a billionaire, all this type of stuff. I don't know how the negotiation process goes, but it's like, yo, this chick wants $50 million. Like,
Yeah.
even if you're my lawyer, how do you even like wrap my mind around it to say, Sean or brother love, whatever you want to call him, you're better off settling than going to, because I might be so arrogant and pompous. I'm like,
Could
before I
be.
pay her $50 million, I'll fight her to death. You know?
Yeah. And listen, there's some instances where that is a smart move. And I've said this before. I didn't make my reputation on settling cases. I made my reputation on hurting people in the courtroom and making sure that, you know, this individual gets hurt enough where the next person who's thinking about doing that says, "Hey, let's not do that because that's not a good idea." So there are times it's just like Kenny Rogers says, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You have to have a conversation with the client, and you have to tell that client, "Hey, listen, this is the complaint that's going to be filed. Like, I don't know, let's go through your, the people that could support you. Let's go through um, you know, your sponsorships that you may lose. Let's go through the businesses that have these in the contract, they have some sort of morality clause, or like all these things that where morals would come into play and you'd lose money on. Add that up. Does that equal, 30 million bucks or 35 million? Now let's tack on another 5 million in attorney's fees, because that case doesn't go away tomorrow. You need a team of attorneys on a case like that to handle it properly. You need expert witnesses. You start going through litigation fees, just that alone, you're looking at 5 million bucks, 4 million bucks, and then you start adding up what you're going to lose in sponsorships, what you're going to lose in business deals, and the possible ding on your reputation. Not to mention, once she files that complaint, it's open season. It's literally, Elmer Fudd's come out of everywhere and they start hunting you down. And that's what happened. So instead of settling this very quietly, making it go away, no one would have said anything. An NDA would have been filed, and that would have been that 35 million bucks.
Does his
Now,
video come
all
out
of a
though?
sudden, what?
Let's say it was leaked by Cassie. We're gonna get into that because
The video.
the video of him putting hands on Cassie, which
Sure.
by the way, I think you're one of the only people I've watched be able to separate emotion from actual legal analysis, because everyone's so caught up that video is so emotionally charged.
Yeah.
Um, Imagine you pay that money. Okay, let's go. This is dream roll, of course. Okay, he pays the
Sure.
settlement. Does that video come out?
My opinion is it doesn't. I think that came out for a very specific reason, and I talk about it on my Instagram. I think that the video came out because I think an indictment's going to come out in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that indictment
2 to 3
is going to
weeks.
name. I think so. I think by the end of June, I think you see an indictment come out. That's my guess. Yeah.
Do you think they're in the process of grand jurying everything now, or do you think, because I read your comments, or do you think they're still at the point of maybe arm twisting with Cassie to say, give us everything you know, and we'll give you this immunity deal because you.
Yeah. Listen, the Southern District of New York is not a a district that sits on their hands. My opinion is that, like I said, I think that they will move fairly quickly. I think they are the reason why he's not leaving the state of Florida is because they probably told him don't leave the state of Florida, and if you do, we're going to arrest you on a complaint. I think all those things are happening. And
Wow.
like I said, I'm relying on my experience, my 27 years of experience. I'm not just guessing like, oh my God, I just got out of law school and I've never had a case like this before. I've had cases like this before where there are warrants issued, where there are items taken. They already have enough probable cause to get a warrant. They have enough probable cause to get a warrant. There's a saying that you can indict a ham sandwich. If they have enough probable cause to get a warrant to search homes in two different states, my guess is that they will have enough to indict. And my guess is that the reason this video came out is because I think in the indictment, Cassie's name, well, it probably won't be her name. It'll probably be unindicted co-conspirator one. I think that they will be talking a lot about what happened between him and her and what they did together. And I think that's why this video came out, because the only way to quote unquote save face in this, and it may be true, by the way, it may just not be saving face. It may actually be true, is to say, I was a sex slave, I was powerless, I wasn't the person I am now. This was a different person. I don't even recognize the person I was back then. All of the things she's saying, in my opinion, feels like that's where this is going. And like I said, I could be wrong. 99% I'm not.
I, I,
I just think that that's what's going to happen.
I agreed with you. By the way, number one, you're the attorney, and I think you're brilliant. And I think your thought with 27 years of experience is worth more than all of us just assuming. But also, let me put this into the air as well, right? If we read through Cassie's complaint, Cassie literally in her complaint admitted, like she literally admitted, hey, I'm the one who procured all these gigolos, these prostitutes, all these other people that was involved in the freak offs. Yeah, I did it at your advice, at your, direction. That might be hard to prove unless it's like, hey, get 15 whatever for tonight. I may have gotten drugs. I may have gotten prostitutes. I may have gotten other women. You may have said, "Hey, who's that girl you were posting up on Instagram with? See if she want to get into the freak off." She's been really involved in procuring a lot of these people. Here's my thing though. Do you think that it would get to the level of her having to leak the video to maybe secure what would be an immunity deal? Because I do think the government would look absolutely crazy even considering indicting Cassie. They would look absolutely nuts. They would have to write this whole new narrative and have to give us so much more information for us to think Cassie, and this is just from the complaint, think that she was not a victim or not someone who was either someone under duress or something else. What do you think?
No, I agree with that. I don't think they could in any world indict Cassie with the evidence that's out there, with the complaint, with her knowledge. But then, and not only that, I don't know how great of a case they can put together against Sean Combs
Without her, right?
without her cooperating, right? You're talking about someone that is by his side 24/7 for years and years and years during when alleged shootings happen, when alleged something else happened. This is the person who's sleeping next to him. She literally is Sammy the Bull, right? So like you can't get any closer to Sean Combs than her. So how do you put together a case without her? And you don't put together a case, you can't put together a case, without giving her immunity. So if she hasn't procured immunity yet, I would guess that it would be forthcoming. I just don't see how you put a case together without it. I mean, certainly there's some aspects you could put together, but I think that she's the linchpin.
Can I ask you this question because this has been confusing to me too? If I'm Diddy, okay, cool. Yeah, granted, I should have probably paid you off before you filed the complaint. You did, but I did pay you off. Why is your attorney almost in a narrative sense basically jumping out to put out statements every time something corroborates that you're the victim? Isn't that odd to you? You got paid. Why is the attorney then saying, hey, see what we told you guys? It's happening. You got paid. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Like, go
He's
split
protecting,
that.
he's
Is it?
protecting his client. Listen, I think that this is a lesson in for her attorney. It is a master class in how to handle these type of situations. He's handling it. If I'm her attorney, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm making sure that everyone understands she is a victim. I'm making sure that everyone understands she had no power, no control, no money, all these different things. And again, that's not to say that's a false narrative. Maybe that's true. Everyone gets, when your emotions get involved in this thing, everyone is like texting me, oh, you're for this or against that. I am strictly looking at it from a legal perspective. Everything that this attorney could be saying is 100%, it could be 100% true. It might not be. It might be that, she was partaking in things willingly. I don't know. But I can tell you what he's doing and how he's going about it. It's a master class in what to do if your client is being swept up into these things. It's what Giselle Maxwell's attorney should have been doing. And whether or not that's true or false, like I said, I don't know. But the same narrative could have been used in other cases. And again, it might have been more attenuated in those other cases. You might not have had as much proof in those other cases that individual is under control and direction of the lead defendant.
Hey, by the way, I'm so with you. Which, by the way, also once we get into the Ghislaine Maxwell stuff, I do believe that in some weird, twisted way, I think she felt she was still exhibiting some loyalty. That's why she didn't completely turn heel. Cassie completely has turned heel. Not saying she's not a victim, and that's the distinction. I was watching you explain it through all your comments, and people were like, "No," which I completely got. Let me read her statement here, and.
Sure.
I read this before you even got on here, and I said to my chat, I said, I wish I had a highlighter because there's certain, obviously her lawyer helped her draft this, but there's certain lines that you clearly could tell what she's trying to say. She says, thank you for all the love and support from my family, friends, strangers, and those I've yet to meet. The outpouring of love has created a place for my younger self to settle and feel safe now, but this is only the beginning. Domestic violence is an issue, and then this is a line right here. It broke me down to someone I never thought I would become. I thought that was an important line.
Yeah.
You want to jump in?
You picked out all the lines that you're picking out are the lines that are important, right? Those are like I said, this attorney drafted, I guarantee the attorney drafted it, and he used very specific language, very specific items. It would be impossible to indict this young lady. I don't see how you would. And then the video, coupled with the video, it's an impossibility to indict her. And the way that she is saying these things, that's what leads me to believe that in this indictment, there are going to be some crazy, crazy, crazy allegations.
I agree.
And she's saying, I'm not the same person. Like, the complaint is one thing. Oh, I procured people. I did these things. I think that the actual indictment itself is going to go into very, very detailed paragraphs about her involvement. And like I said, it might not specifically name her because it might be unindicted co-conspirator, but I think it's going to go into very specific involvement with different issues and different things that are surrounding the sex trafficking and possible drugs and things of that nature. I think it's going to be very, very specific. And this is a way, and like I said, it may be completely true that she was under his control.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep saying those things. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
sad
think
because like when you're analyzing this and you're trying to just be objective and you know a lot of times like you know when you're being objective you got to remove the emotion because
right.
the emotional reaction to seeing a man beat a woman like we seen on that video is nothing that needs objection or anything else. It's just like this guy's disgusting. He needs to be penalized. But we're not just at the point of saying this guy needs to be penalized. We're trying to, you know, extrapolate into what could be coming or forthcoming in terms of like criminal charges. By the
That's
way,
all.
the next paragraph, which what I noticed about this whole statement, the last line of every paragraph is very telling. I'll read the next paragraph. Thank you to everyone that has taken the time to take this matter seriously. My only ask is that everyone open your heart to believe in victims the first time. Here we go. It takes a lot of heart to tell the truth out of a situation that you were powerless in.
Correct. That's it. So like all those lines, those are the key lines. And like I said, to the normal, just the average day person reading that, they're like, okay, as soon as I read that, I knew, those things blew up right at me as soon as I read it. And I was like, okay, like this is what I'm trying to tell everybody, that all these things came out after I posted the first time. Right. And I'm like, I guarantee. And like I said, that video is a horrible video. I don't condone it. I don't think domestic violence is smart or good or anything like that. The images on that video are
Disgusting
shocking, disgusting,
aberrant.
shocking,
Is
all of the
abhorrent.
above, all the
Mhm.
above. What I try to do is I try to look at situations and I try to analyze them in the legal perspective. And I get flack for this all the time. Sometimes I'll talk about Hunter Biden's case,
Okay.
and people that like Trump tell me, "Oh, I can't believe that you're talking about Hunter." I think Hunter Biden's case is bullshit. Like, I mean, Kodak was charged with the same thing. I thought that it was bullshit that he was going to get a diversion program was crazy. I thought that was crazy. But the case itself, that I was a crack user when I filled out this form and I put down that I'm not addicted to drugs on this federal form. I think that's bullshit. And I also think Kodak's case is bullshit. Kodak's federal case is bullshit. So,
Hey, and by the way, there's a million. I think me and you could do a whole 2 hours just about Kodak. Um, there's been so much misunderstandings or just what's been reported in the media because what happens is, and you know this by now, a police report comes out, there's, especially TMZ and other entities and shit, even we're in the business of it. We have constant, like we
yeah,
hit all these police precincts
sure.
with like queries for certain names. When the name comes back that there's an arrest, that's the narrative until an attorney or they get arraigned, and then we start hearing what might be a defense. So
Right.
an artist or anyone looks super guilty, and
Right.
me and you we've been there
Correct. Correct. I'm
exactly.
I'm very listen. I fight for my client. Kodak's different. I mean, I fight for all my clients. If someone talks shit about my clients, I come after them
Yeah,
like I would
I
come
like that.
after someone. If someone talks shit about my son, Kodak, it happens to be a different. It's a little bit of a different client
Why?
attorney client relationship because I've known him since he was a kid. I've mentored him. I've talked to him. I've walked him through different things, and I just know how he thinks, and I know what a good soul he is because I've seen him do things that he doesn't want me talking about, doesn't want me going to the press about, doesn't want me, getting any fanfare about. And that's why he's a different type of person than generally like people do things. Oh, I want to, I have to rehab my image. He doesn't do that. Like he'll do things when he doesn't need to rehab his image that he says, don't go to the press, don't talk to anybody, just get that done or get this done. So it's a different type of relationship. But listen, I'm like, I go to war with people over, I don't know. It's just, that's just how I grew up. my friends, my friends since I was in kindergarten. I've had friends since I was in kindergarten that they tell me, hey, it's like in the town, we're gonna go hurt some people, and you can't ask me about this. And whose car are we driving? I'll show up at 3 o'clock in the morning for any of my clients that call me and say they need my help, and I've done it before. So it's a different attorney-client relationship with Kodak than anybody else. But yeah, you're right.
And
That
by the
is
way,
we could do a whole you could do a whole show on the fact that the press generally only likes and only the viral stuff goes when it's something bad. On any of these
and
rappers,
by the way,
they love it.
And by the way, I definitely want to do a long form, really in depth. I know we're on streaming. A lot of people there talking about the Diddy stuff, and we're gonna keep it there because I would have you here for like the rest of your night. I know
No,
you're
it's
so
all
busy.
good.
I did hear though. I heard that Kodak being pardoned, you were so much of a influential figure in that. Is that true? We don't have to get into the minute details. Um,
Um, I pushed very hard I was his attorney for the pardon. I was
mhm.
Wayne's attorney for his pardon as
I heard
well.
that too.
But I pushed very hard with anyone that would listen to me that I thought that both were deserving of a pardon. I mean, I rounded up any entertainer that would support, Little Yachty. I talked to Little Yachty all the time. Little Pump, I talked all the time. And like people talk shit about Pump. I go to bat for Pump
Mm.
every single time because I know how loyal he was. I called everybody and anyone. Kim Kardashian, I was calling. Meek Mill, who didn't return a single phone call, by the way. All these guys, I was calling, and I remember who was loyal to me. I remember who wasn't loyal to me. And that's just the kind of guy that I am. But I was very happy to represent both of them for those pardons.
You
We
didn't
we
take a lot of credit for that, but I noticed that byline because I noticed the small things. When I seen the pardons come down, what I noticed was Bradford Cohen really went to bat for a few artists within hip hop, and he successfully, which I was flabbergasted. I'm like, how the fuck did you get this on not only the president's table, but on his radar, but even enough that, he could put a signature to that and be like, I want to put my name and my reputation on that. That was like amazing.
Yeah,
And
it was.
and, and by the way, I didn't see you run off with like, hey, I'm taking a credit, but I did notice the name.
It was a massive undertaking, and with any of these, listen, anytime it's a pardon, a commutation, or anything with any president, they pay attention to individuals that have a lot of backing. And the tweets going out saying free Kodak and like, hey, all those things helped, and they help
Really?
with any president. If we're just living in a crazy time right now that social media, the presidents are watching social media, and their teams are watching social media to the point where it garners attention for people that might not have gotten attention before. So, I use any tool I can to try to do the best for my clients. And in that case, Twitter, Instagram, all those things, those were huge. All those campaigns were huge, for Kodak, because and like I said, the people that supported him, no one gets anything done just on their own. Everybody has a team behind them. And if you think, there is no Superman without the Justice League. Like, I don't care what you say, like you need to have people supporting you. You need to have that kind of push. And even Jake Paul helped.
Really?
Um, he,
How?
he he was tweeting out. He was tweeting out. Pump was tweeting out. Anyone, all these individuals that I made connections with throughout the years were really helping me get more attention to the issues. And I filed civil lawsuits on his behalf in DC because of the treatment that he was receiving. And I think that also brought a lot of attention to the subject. And to be honest with you, we could do a whole whole series on justice reform that Biden hasn't touched justice reform. And under Trump, that First Step Back is a huge thing. I have clients getting out now, 12 months early to a halfway house and compassionate releases more than ever. And that was all under President Trump's thumb in terms of the First Step Back. No one has done anything like that since. And DOJ really hasn't changed. Biden appointed a new person for Department of Prisons. Hasn't changed. He appointed a new woman for the Department of Prisons, and it's still the same old stuff. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in federal prisons that no one actually is paying attention to, and it's a big issue. It is a big issue, and the reason why is because most people are like, if they're in prison, they deserve it anyways. And it's like, we're in America. There's a certain level. If you're guilty, not guilty, if there's something wrong with the system, we need to fix that. And that's my opinion. And like I said, I'm in no position to judge anybody, nor do I. Everyone has their own situation. I don't judge Diddy. I don't judge any of these people. I wasn't in their shoes. I don't know what they did before or what led to this or anything like that. I try to stay objective, and I do a good job for those individuals.
Let me ask. So I'm now going to ask you a question that it's probably going to be beyond just your legal expertise, but it's probably your gut feeling a little bit. Obviously, you'll use your legal expertise. I heard you criticizing a few of the cases that did come across, with Diddy. And like, for example, the Liza Garner situation that was filed
Sure.
in the wrong state.
Sure.
In hip hop, we've seen that the Lil Rod situation. And by the way, I want to also be very open and honest. I don't want to do a gotcha moment. I'm a media outlet. I don't have a law degree. I kind of report whatever, but I want to stay with the truth. There was a point, and this was very interesting. There was a point that, in the Lil Rod lawsuit, there was accusations of underage women. Number one, that came out to be false. The woman came out to say, "Hey, that's me in the picture. I'm 40. I was never underage." Anyway, the attorney in that case, which I don't know if you know what case that was. That was the one versus Christian Combs.
Okay. I know I'm familiar with it, but I don't know the ins and outs of it.
So I received one day, randomly, a message that when I start criticizing the lawsuit, the lawyer in question, which, Mr. Tyrone Blackburn, he said, "Hey, listen, I don't like your commentary about whatever I was saying." And I took what he said to me as, it's turned to a whole legal situation, so I won't even go too much on it. But regardless, the Cassie thing, which, by the way, I think the lawyer there is Doug Whitford.
Different lawyer.
Yeah.
That lawyer, like I said, her lawyer is a real guy.
Well, what do you feel about? There's been like 20 different lawsuits. Half of them, or actually about 80% of them, have been covered by Mr. Tyrone Blackburn. You've seen that, they're filed in the wrong district, the wrong state. Again, this is not a defense or be like, "Hey, Diddy's not whatever." What have you thought about the legal strategies of the other individuals that have came into play since the Cassie thing started?
I think that when you're filing cases like this, and early on in my career, I had a couple cases like this against some popular individuals. And I think when you're filing a case like this, you need to be so very careful because number one is you're making accusations that are very, very serious. You need to weigh the credibility of your client very carefully. You need to get any backup information, any backup evidence. Yeah, you don't know the type of lawsuits that we file, but when we file a lawsuit, there is no aha gotcha moment for the defense. I know everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. I know every single thing that took place. I have pictures. I have whatever I have. I know I have everything. And I tell my client, if I don't have everything, I don't represent them. I won't stay on a case. If there's an aha gotcha moment that the defense sends over and says, hey, by the way, this was wrong, or I never met that person, or when your person is saying that that happened in Texas, I was actually in Paris. There is no time that that would ever happen in any cases that we file because we leave no stone unturned. I've I think that I've seen the complaints that have been filed. Uh, I never criticize other attorneys for their strategy, their legal strategy. Sometimes it's not things that I would do. So I always say like, hey, the legal strategy is probably not something that I would go about doing, but that's legal strategy.
By the way, I also, because I've talked to other attorneys, I do want to ask you on a civil strategy level. In a few of these lawsuits, which we've all pulled up, and I go through them here. I have no law degree or nothing. I'm just like a regular person, just kind of reading through these things. But they'll use photographs of, say, like Diddy's son in handcuffs,
Right.
him with a
Yeah.
weapon to his head. Diddy look very, very. The images seem to almost be playing to the media as opposed to playing to the case,
Yeah.
right? And,
And
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 it's a
that's
complaint. What do you think
yeah,
about it?
and that's not the way. Listen, it's other every attorney has their own strategy. That's not a strategy that we employ. That's number one. Number two is it also could go, and again, this is not knocking Mr. Blackburn. I don't know him. He could be the greatest attorney of all time. I have no idea. I don't know all of his experience that he had, how many trials he's had, how many complaints he's filed, if he worked for the state attorney's office or the PD's office or worked for a civil.
Allegedly, he's about like 3 or 4 years, or 2 to 4 years out of law school. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's true.
And when you first get out of law school and you get a case that you think is going to be, a major case, you have to really, like I said, cross your T's and dot your I's. The moving of the jurisdiction, I think, made that case look very, very, that is a huge red flag, in my opinion,
Mm,
that your client didn't inform you. And it could be, listen, it's very likely not his fault. It could be the client didn't inform him of this, and then all of a sudden something came up, and he's like, "Hey, I would if that happened to me, I'd probably withdraw off the case if a client didn't tell me the right state that the occurrence happened in."
that's wild.
But that's kind of up to the attorney. And like I said, I don't know him. I've never met him. But that in itself was a great blunder that causes a question in the whole case. And I've always said this, and I was just commenting on Michael Cohen's testimony on Newsmax, and I
What do you
said,
think about it?
yeah, I was just saying, if someone lies about, and I also said this, that there's nothing that makes a convicted felon and perjurer more honest than when he's testifying for the state. There, all of a sudden, you should believe everything a person says when they're a state witness. But I'll put that aside for a moment. But I was saying, if you catch someone in a lie on the stand, it causes a question in every single thing that they said, right? So at what point, if they're willing to lie on the stand and they're willing to go against their oath, then how can I rely on anything else they say? So when you have a sworn complaint, which I think this was a sworn complaint, but even if it wasn't, when you have a complaint that's making specific allegations, and then you bring your client in and you go over the complaint with your client before you file it, and you say, okay, this is what we're going to file, this is how we're going to file it. These are
Is it
the
your job
allegations.
to is it your job to try to at least make sure what is being alleged in the complaint is true? Because maybe the person could be like, Well, my client said it was a bunch of underage girls at Diddy's parties. I just put it in the complaint. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you have to confirm what your client is saying,
Okay.
and you confirm it through evidence that they bring in. Like I said, we're very picky with the cases that we take on the plaintiff side. And the reason for that, and some people are like, oh, you don't take any of the cases. We don't take any cases that don't have some sort of corroborating evidence for what I don't just take a case. Someone can say, oh, I'll pay you to take the case. Well, people have said that before. I'll pay you to file the complaint. It's not a matter of money. It is a matter of reputation. My dad used to tell me, you can build a reputation over a lifetime, and one dumb mistake that will crush everything that you built up until that point. So you have to be like that. And especially, when it comes to these serious allegations, you have to find out all the details before you file the complaint. Like I said, this isn't a knock against Mr. Blackburn. I don't know him, but you need to really check all those
Brad.
facts.
Hey, listen, I'll help you and I'll say what you don't want to say. The Cassie lawsuit holds a little bit of water. We've seen the chaos that's caused. The 17-year-old person who's still Jane Doe, who allegedly has to identify themselves eventually, that's what the court has ruled. Hold a little bit of water. By the way, it's represented by the same person as Cassie. Lil Rod, the one against Christian Combs, these subsequent ones. By the way, there's a new one that claims that Diddy was sexually assaulting her, but she kept going back there. I'm not saying that. Hey, I don't want to speak to what victims might do. There is another one that isn't represented by the same person. I'm seeing almost a pattern.
Yeah,
There is not a lot of due diligence when this one individual, who, by the way, you also know, they were referred to a grievance committee off of a Rule 11
violation.
violation. Exactly.
Yeah, and
And,
Rule
and,
11
and
violations are pretty serious.
hold on.
Just so we're clear.
No. Because my audience doesn't know what that is. Please explain what that is.
It's a federal violation by a judge for either something misappropriation in a complaint, or something that the lawyer did to warrant a Rule 11 violation. And what happens is they can refer you to the bar. Number one, they can sanction you. They can award attorney's fees to the other side on a Rule 11, on a motion to dismiss or something like that. It's not Rule 11 sanctions are nothing that you want as a lawyer, and it's in a federal matter.
Have you ever
You
got
never
one?
want no, I've never gotten a Rule 11 sanction. I've gotten Rule 11 sanctions against other attorneys, but no, I've never
Is it
gotten a Rule
out the
11.
ordinary that maybe a possible new attorney? Because honestly, here's the thing: we all like, and I'm now speaking as, this is DJ Academics speaking as the media pundit. We've heard a bunch of shit about Diddy. We do think he's been on some bullshit. Here's the thing: not because I think you've been on some bullshit. Everything anyone says, it's automatically believed. There's a few people who, they have financial gain. I've pointed out myself because, one of the attorneys for these people contacted me after I doubted the veracity of one of their claims. They contacted me to be like, yo, what's up? And I'm like, then I realized they're trying to use the media. Because if you care what the media is interpreting your lawsuits, your complaints to be, these are not complaints that have been either substantiated by, an actual trial where a jury is gonna. This isn't even something that's even survived maybe initial motion to dismiss. I looked at it, I was like, oh, I get what this is. They're now using platforms like mine to shame people, to harass people into settlements.
Yeah,
And
that'll happen. That happens. Listen, like I said, I've been around the block many times, and these things happen. These things happen a lot. When you're an individual who has some notoriety, you're going to be a target to individuals that want to um, try and get a settlement from you with things that are true and things that aren't true. It just depends. It depends on the case, depends on the lawyers. You had the Tiger Woods stuff that, essentially, what was the big deal with that is that it wasn't something that they were asserting that they were doing unwillingly. It was just, hey, listen, there's all these women, you're married, and I think we can file these laws. It was a crazy situation, but he felt that he wanted to settle those cases out instead of taking a ding to his reputation. And I've met Tiger before. He's a good guy. I mean, listen, everyone has these things that come up, and
The
you have a
biggest
choice.
problem with Tiger is that he was fucking a bunch of like fives and sixes. He should have been fucking nines and tens. You know,
I just it just is what it is. Like I said, I,
Hey, by
I
the way,
try not.
I don't want to put you in any like drama. Anyway, yo, let's kind of shift to YSL.
Sure.
The YSL situation, I started to be very interested in it. It has bored me to sleep. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
I've looked at Fonnie Willis, who's tied up in some other shit. I just can't understand. Please give us a realistic understanding of what's going on with there, and what do you think is going to happen?
So I think the problem with RICO cases, and I've said this quite often, is that RICO cases give prosecutors very, very wide discretion as to what they can bring in and what they can discuss. And the problem is, it's like a buffet, and when you have someone that can't stop eating, and that's what happens to prosecutors. So in this case, these prosecutors just they don't want to stop eating. They listed like 600 witnesses, which is
No.
unbelievably ridiculous.
By the way, at a point, they brought up a old YouTube video of mine, tried to enter it after they listed like 400 witnesses. They're like, hey, we want to introduce this last thing. And the judge says, hey, unless the person who actually made the video is down to come here and testify, no. And they're like, and I'm watching this, and like all my media partners sent them. I'm like, I'm not going in there. What the fuck are they talking about? Like, RICO, is this legal where the state could just use a little bit of everything to just pile on to just build a mountain of, hey, this is our narrative and hope you get convicted?
Certainly, that's what they're trying to do. The judge is starting to limit a lot of it. I think that a lot of this should have been addressed before the case even started. And I wouldn't have allowed a lot of the things that are going on. I mean, if this case goes on for a year and a half, and the state just keeps bringing up things that they weren't going to introduce, but now they feel like, oh, I found something. Over a year and a half, they can find whatever. I mean, investigations can keep going on. There has to be some point where there's a cutoff and say, hey, listen, you've provided all the evidence that you're going to provide. Here's the case. Here's what it is. Unless you want to get a mistrial, you're bringing in things that are just not going to come in on the norm, and then you want them in under some auspice of, oh, judge, we just found this and we want this in. To me, the case is completely off the rails. I think a lot of those attorneys are very frustrated. A lot of defense attorneys are very frustrated. I think it's a good team of attorneys, and I think they're trying to control themselves. On the state side, all I have seen are errors on the state side. That doesn't mean they're not going to get a conviction, because they're going to be in court for the next 12 or 13 months. I don't know how
Really?
a jury is going to remember what was said in the first month of the trial. I don't even know how they're going to do a closing with 600 witnesses to go through what each witness said and to go through the evidence. I mean, the closing could take 2 days for each side. So I think that it was a huge blunder. I think she bit off more than she could chew. I think there were smaller cases that could have been brought that she could have got time on and saved face. But she decided to go for the gusto with this RICO case. And I just don't think it was a smart move. I think she should have taken, she should have taken small buckets of crimes, charged those crimes, worked out deals or worked out pleas, or gone to trial on some of those cases. But I don't think anything she's doing is smart in this case. I think it's a huge, huge state blunder. And it also shows a lot of weakness in RICO cases in Atlanta. And the Trump's charged with a RICO case in Atlanta. He just got 3 of the 13 counts against him dismissed. And I think that it shows a lot of weakness on her part. Not to mention, all this other stuff that's going on that's peripheral. I don't think it affects. I think it's poor decision making on her. I think it just demonstrates poor decision making. And I just don't understand why she would want to stay on cases that make her look like there is a bias or make her look like there is some sort of error on her part. Just pass the case on. It's not that big of a deal to get a different state attorney to handle the case. And it really shows a weakness in her character to keep the case when she should just be, giving it over. And I think she should have given at least the Trump case, she should have passed that one on. And on this RICO case, I think that she just bit off more than she could chew.
So, and going back to Florida, why do you think that doesn't happen there? And another thing, I was wondering, as as I said, a super lawyer who represents, some of the people who are in the worst of positions. We've seen the resolution at this point of, and by the way, salute to everybody who has been pointing out to me that XXXTentacion, he has gained the most amount of streams he's ever gotten in his whole career, even though he's been deceased for 6 years.
I represented him in a bond hearing. He was a
Really?
good kid. Yeah, nice kid. Nice kid. I talked to him for a while. He's a good kid. Very, very. Listen, all my clients have some uniqueness to them, and whenever someone's an artist or a sports figure, they always have interesting backgrounds, interesting takes on things. I thought, I represented DMX very early in my career.
Did you?
And
How was that?
and it was amazing. I really, when DMX was on and like just having a conversation with him, Earl, he was really, his dad was a jazz musician. He gave me great stories about his parents. It's just, his stories were very, very interesting. And like, just his whole, it was a different experience than I thought it was going to be when I first met him. When I first came in, I thought, you just know what you know about DMX, and then when you actually meet the person and they have like more to them, a lot of depth. He was an interesting guy. I thought he was a really, really, and there's another guy I went to war with, Joe Arcapaio in Arizona had it out for him. The sheriff that was ultimately indicted. But then I think he got a pardon too. But him and I would go at it. He'd want to say something about DMX, and I felt, very,
He was
I
living
take
in
those things
Arizona,
personally.
too. You're right.
Yeah, so I take those things personally. And he had an amazing attorney in New York too. And that attorney in New York, I think his daughter is still a defense attorney in New York, and she's awesome too. And it's Murray. I can't remember his last name, but he was a phenomenal attorney and a great guy. We had a lot of conversations about Earl, and he treated Earl, DMX, he treated him like he was a relative, and so did his daughter. Like he was part of their family because they represented him for so long. And I really related to that because I get very involved with my clients in terms of, their families. I want to know about them.
Kodak bought you a truck.
What'd you say?
Kodak bought you a truck. Bro, he
Yeah.
loves you.
Yeah. A couple of years. Yeah.
No.
Well, he's a great, like I said, it always comes back to, I can count maybe 1 or 2 clients in my whole
What's
entire
the conversations with you and Kodak? Because like he talks about you in such a loving way of just
great.
like you've
He's
looked
the
out
best.
for him. Like, what are these conversations? Give us from your perspective.
I mean, non-legal conversations.
Yes.
Him and I talk about everything. We talk about, we always, I mentor him as much as I can in terms of situations. And I mean, we talk about cars a lot too. He's a car. He just finished like a 71 convertible. So I'm a car guy.
Really?
So we talk about cars a lot. And we business, we talk about business a lot. What I think that would make money for him, just all kinds of things. Like, any relationship that you can think of where you are concerned for that individual and want to see that individual succeed. And listen, I want to see all my clients succeed. Kodak, like I said, we have a different relationship because we're closer than that. Those are the conversation we have. But he comes over for Passover. He comes over for Jewish holidays. My
Hey,
family, my
could I
family
ask
loves.
a could I ask a you know, people know me in hip hop as a pocket watcher.
Yeah,
Some of these cases I've seen you like win, and I'm like, oh, that's like $1 million. Like, ooh, how do you even like when you have these relationships with these guys? Like, how do you even charge them though? Like
yeah.
it.
So Kodak's a different animal. Like I really don't send Kodak bills. Um, Kodak and I have a different relationship. We just have a different relationship. I consider Kodak like, he's part of my family, really. I mean, his son comes over, plays with my son.
Really?
Yeah, and he's just a great guy. You know who also is great? One of Kodak's friends, Lamar Jackson. Great guy.
Really?
Great guy. Another one that you would never know. He always backed. He was another one who, by the way, I should have mentioned him. He was another one that supported Kodak during the pardon process. And he was a big one because, the President Trump is a huge football fan. So if you're a quarterback, he loves Tom Brady, but he loves Lamar Jackson, and like that's another one that's just a great. He's a great ride or die. And Kodak introduced me to the Lamar, and Lamar and I were in South Carolina on an unrelated issue, and he had to get shoes. This is a good story because it's not a press story, right? And he had to get shoes, and so he's like, "Hey man, I forgot my dress shoes." So I'm like, all right, like let's find a place to get you dress shoes. We're in the middle of the sticks, like in South Carolina. And I'm like, there's a men's warehouse, right? So he's like, all right. So we go to this men's warehouse.
Wait.
We
You
walk
actually
in.
go there, or you send like people to go there?
No. We go in, me and him. So we go into men's warehouse, and because let me tell you something. Lamar is like the most down to earth, dope, like great. I mean, he's great. He's just a great kid. And we go into this men's warehouse, and there's like four guys in there already, four younger kids, and they're like looking at him. They're like, "Are you Lamar Jackson?" And he's like, "Yeah." One kid just freaks out. He's like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "You're my favorite player." Like this kid was like in the back. He comes out. He recognizes Lamar in a second, and he's like, "Oh, we're getting tuxes for my grandma's funeral." And Lamar's like, "Oh man, I'm sorry." He's like, "No." He's like, "It's okay." And they take pictures with him. The kid was like kind of in tears about his grandma, and Lamar is kind of like, taking selfies with them, signing stuff, and then we go up to the counter. They're still doing their shopping. We go up to the counter. Lamar pays for all their tuxedos, buys his shoes, pays for all their tuxedos, and we just leave. No big deal. And like it's just like cool shit like that, man. Like that it's not going to be reported on. No one's calling the press about it. It's just
Yeah. Wow.
that is his nature. And like I've seen Kodak do that. I've seen Kodak walk into like a sneaker place. Like, we'll be in Chicago. I remember we were in Chicago when he first got pardoned. I had to go pick him up in Chicago. And
You have to go
I
pick
picked
him
him,
up.
yeah, I had to go pick him up in Chicago. Well, I didn't have to. I wanted to,
Yeah. Of
and
course. Of course. Of course.
so I fly up to Chicago. I pick him up from like the boondocks. It's like an hour and a half outside Chicago. And he's got no clothes to wear. So we got to get like normal clothes and stuff. So we get all these clothes, and you got to get sneakers. And like we walk into some sneaker place. It was during COVID. So he had a mask on, he had his hoodie up. Nobody even recognized him. And there was like three or four kids that were looking at sneakers, and their parents were like saying like, these are too expensive. These are too expensive. And Kodak's like, hey, he's like, listen, he's like, make sure those three kids get whatever sneakers they want. And I'm like, all right. So I walk over to the parents. I'm like, hey, listen, I represent somebody. He's already left the store. Kodak already leaves the store.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I represent somebody, and they want to make sure that your kids get whatever sneakers they want. They were like shocked, and they're like, they thought it was like a, like there
Yeah. Like
was
almost like a troll.
like
Like
it was
you're joking.
bullshit. No, I'm like, no, no, no. So they all picked out like Jordans or whatever, and that was it. And it's like, those type of situations, those type of things, like you don't see it. TMZ doesn't see it.
That's true.
None of these people see it. So like when people ask me, why do you get so defensive with some clients and all these, why do you do that? It's because I have a relationship with them and I know what's bullshit. And when I see, something happen to them or I see someone commenting something and I know they don't know the person, it gets me angry because I know the person and I know what type of person they are. So, like I said, that's why I have the relationship I have with Kodak because, he's like family. He came to my birthday a couple weeks ago, and like, I mean, he entertained everybody. There was like 20 people there. He entertains everybody. He's walking around, taking selfies, hugging people. My mom and dad are hugging him. Like,
Nah, he
my
loves you.
mom's like,
Nah, he
my
loves
mom
you.
loves Kodak, huh?
Listen, I know he loves you.
Yeah, he's the greatest.
And listen,
He's a great kid.
I think for a second, me and you had like a little run
Yeah,
in before.
yeah, because I felt like you were coming after. Listen,
No, I
I always,
love
when you wanted me on the show, I was like, fuck. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. But like, I was thinking in my head, like,
yo
we had this little
when
beef.
when Kodak got released. I
Yeah.
promise you, Kodak gets released. He did a podcast on my podcast off the record, and he said, he said, I'm glad you started being nicer to Bradford because I'm gonna be honest with you. I would have probably had to do something to you because I love that guy. And I was like, damn,
Bro,
he
he's
really
just,
do love you, man.
bro, he's the best. Like, listen, I've just been lucky. I'm a very, and I say this all the time, I'm a very lucky guy that I got to get the clients that I have, the relationships that I have, even with, like, like I said, relationships that I have with state attorneys, relationships that I have with judges that like I genuinely, I'm not thinking they're gonna do me a favor. I'm friends with people because I like them. Like I'm not friends with them for what they can do for me. And I'm at a place in my career, I don't need to take another case. I really don't. I take cases now because, I sit down with the person, I talk to them, I know that I can help them. And there's some cases I feel like, I look at them and I'm like, man,
Would you
there's not
take
a
the
lot I
Diddy
can do.
case? If Diddy hits you up and says, hey, listen, I already have like a team of attorneys, but I need you a part of the general counsel that's kind of like guiding these guys. There's so much shit coming, whether it's civil or possible like state DAs or whatever trying to look into me. I need somebody like you to help me. Would you do that, or would you be like, hey, listen, this is too messy? And also on a PR perspective, hey, listen, that video just went out. I,
Yeah.
I don't want to be seen as the person that's aligned with the guy that's in that video.
Yeah.
How do you treat that?
So let me start with this. Um, I'm not the attorney on a lot of uh I know what I'm good at. I'm not generally good at um these sex type cases. And the reason why is because my cross-examination is just it's not good. If there's a female victim on the stand, my cross-examination is not a cross-examination that goes over well with a jury
You're
when
aggressive. That's what you're
yeah,
trying. Like
I'm a
you're
I'm
aggressive, and you
yeah.
probably lack the empathy that people want to see. She could be lying out the ass, but if you're just like sinking your teeth into it, it's like we don't know,
Right.
right?
I,
I get
I'm
it.
in that situation, I'm the fat kid at the buffet
Yeah,
that
yeah.
can't stop eating. Right. So that's kind of part one.
By the way, hold on,
Then
hold on. I'm sorry for interrupting.
yeah.
Do you advise, as you say, do you advise that anyone who is accused or in any situation with a sexual, either possible criminal charge or civil charge, that they go with maybe a female attorney to possible mitigate that? Show
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
hey,
You-
listen,
That's usually the smart thing to do is at least have a female attorney on your team. And I'll just use like Kevin Spacey, for example.
okay,
in the Kevin Spacey case, he hired a guy who specialized in those type of sexual cases, and he crushed it. I mean, the guy won every single Kevin Spacey criminal case, and that's because that guy specialized in it. You have to hire people that is what they do. Way to go about it. In my opinion, if you're going to get heart surgery, you go to a doctor that does heart surgery. You don't go to a brain surgeon. So that's my personal opinion. And I've had cases that were like this in my early career. I just prefer not to do them, and that I'm not great at them, and I know what I'm great at, and I stick to what I'm great at.
You're an animal. I like that. You're an animal. Bring you in when the fucking state attorney, the DA is basically saying, "Hey, you had these drugs, you had you did this, you shot this person."
Right. I like
Things
my
that
gun cases, my drug cases. You bring me in on a murder case, you bring me in on a drug case, a trafficking case, all those type of cases. Those I love, and I flourish on those cases. The sex cases I'm just not great at, and I don't mind admitting what I'm not great at. It's like you don't give. John Wick might not be great at a samurai sword. He might be better, with handguns.
Mariano Rivera, one of the greatest closers in baseball history. You don't put him to start. He's a closer.
That's all.
Okay,
That's all.
you bring him in
Yeah.
after the seventh inning. You don't bring him in to do the first to six, right? And he's one of the best ever. But he knew what he was good at. So
That's all.
That's very interesting. Listen, hey, chat. Is there anything else? And I know, by the way, thank you so much. You've been so
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
You've been so great, and I hope I'm trying to foster a relationship with you that, obviously I talk about hip hop a lot, and you're one of the people not only that provides insight. I see you actually defending these cases. I'm telling you, that Rod Wave case, I was like, fuck, and I looked at your page, I'm like, what the fuck? Chat, anything else you guys want me to ask him about? By the way, they absolutely love you for everything you said about Kodak. Some people are asking if they could afford you.
I listen, like I said, again, I take a lot of cases just because I like, if someone comes in my office and I like them, I've been known to take cases just because I like the person. It really, like I said, I'm just at a point in my career. I take cases that I know I like, and I like the person. They're going to listen to me. They're going to take my advice. And I'll tell you a quick story, and then I got to run.
Go ahead.
But when I was a younger attorney, there was a defendant that I had. His name, and I remember him to this day. His name was Kier Chevlon. This Haitian kid. It was just a great. I really loved the kid. He had an amazing, great smile. I was like, this kid could be like a superstar. I just loved the kid. The kid was a really good kid. He was like 15 years old. And back then, BSO, Broward Sheriff's Office, what they would do is they would close cases with young kids by driving them around the neighborhood. They catch them maybe breaking into a car. And then they would be like, oh, did you break into other cars in this area? They'd be like, no, I didn't. They're like, listen, if you admit to it, don't worry about it. We're going to not charge you with it. And they lie their asses off. And they would drive around the neighborhood and they would close all these open cases for car thefts and put it all on one kid. So this kid, Kier Chevlon, gets charged with 20 grand thefts for breaking and entering into vehicles. And at the time, I was being appointed cases, meaning that I was a defense attorney, but if there was a conflict of interest with the public defender's office, they would appoint me to be the outside counsel. So I was appointed as outside counsel for this kid, Kier. And I meet the kid. I like the kid. I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Bro," he's like, they got me in this room. They just had me start admitting to shit. And I did break into this one car, but I couldn't have broken into these other cars because some of these, I wasn't even in town. Yeah, I wasn't even in town when these cars were being broken into. So I look into it. I file a motion to suppress. I talk to the prosecutor. They end up filing them as adult charges on the kid. The kid was like 16, and I end up getting all the cases dismissed. all 20 grand thefts. And his mom was thanking me. He was thanking me. Anyways, fast forward like 10 years. This is when I mean, this is probably like 99, 2000. Fast forward 10 years to like 2010, I get a letter in the mail, um, handwritten, and it says, I think it was like Staff Sergeant Chevlon. And he joined the Army. He became super successful in the Army. He ended up being a staff sergeant. He wrote this big long letter that said like he wanted to thank me because without me he wouldn't be able to get into the Army. The Army changed his whole career around, his whole life around, and like he essentially was telling me how successful he was. He had a family. He had a son and a wife, and they were living, I think, in Germany or something. And he was just giving me kind of the rundown. That to me motivates, like I read that motivates me more than, oh, someone can pay me, 100 grand for a case, because like that like tells me I had an effect on someone. I had, my hand was there and I was able to guide him into the right path, the right way, and like totally change the trajectory of his life to something different. That motivates me more than like I said, like, oh, someone says, oh, I can pay you 100 grand. I mean, listen, it's always good to someone say, hey, I can pay you 100 grand, but like the fact that someone would listen to me and take my advice and take my mentorship, which I knew him for the next year and a half or 2 years until his family moved away, and did something with it, became successful. That is more fulfilling to me than getting another 100 grand. Especially now in my career, like I'm 53. Like I do this for another couple of years. I'm ready to, do something different. I think, and maybe another 2 or 3 years, and then I'd like to do something.
So Kodak Black and his lawyer Bradford Cohen, or Law Ronan, wherever his thing is called, you feel me? Ack and him, they had a conversation on Discord. Man, this whole Diddy situation is wild. Every single time I hear people talk about it, I just wonder myself, like, damn, every day is something new. Like, I ain't gonna lie, the way allegations work, if the most wildest things about Diddy just came up randomly, I would be inclined to like believe it's true. Like every single day they're just always saying some new terrible thing about Diddy. So hey man, it's getting real, really crazy out here. But man, let me know how you guys feel about everything, bro. Do you think Diddy could ever make a comeback? Is there anything Diddy could do to come back? If not, it is what it is. If so, let me know in the comments below. It's your boy Big Act News. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I am